Six Nations Ireland 2022 review. The Six Nations is well in the bag by this point. We're going to go back and look at the results for Ireland in the 2022 campaign, especially compared to the previous year, see if there's kind of been much in the way of progress. We'll look at some stats, both positive and negative, and then give a verdict on how kind of successful or not the campaign went. We've already looked at the teams that finished below Ireland, like Italy and Wales and England and Scotland, but yeah, we'll go through Ireland at this point. The results, and to be fair, 4 wins, 1 loss, 21 points, difference of points of 105. Most years, that's good enough, I would say, for a title. Obviously, if you can get the Grand Slam, it's guaranteed. But 4-1, 21 points. Wales, when they won it in 2021, finished with 20 points. So 21 and finishing second is certainly not a bad shift, especially when you compare it to 2021. 2021 was kind of unspectacular, not terrible. 3-2 that year. They finished third. They still had a positive points differential with 48. They finished with 15 points, but yeah, 2022 certainly cracked on from where they were in 2021. It was a definitely up a gear from what we've seen from Andy Farrell's boys up until that point. I mean, looking at some pretty basic stats, tries, like the not quite the be-all and end-all, but one of the kind of key measuring sticks. 2021, they scored 12. 2022, it's doubled to 24. And it's not like every team in the Six Nations suddenly scored loads more tries. England went down, you know what I mean? So to go double in itself is a pretty amazing stat. Tries conceded goes down from 10 to 4. So also a big step in the right direction. Very, very pleasing stuff. And that's kind of, really surface level stuff. What about the way they were playing the game? Certainly able to cut teams open. Clean breaks, 5.4 in 2021, up to 6.6 in 2022. And then defensively, tighter. Not conceding a heck of a lot of clean breaks. Conceding 6 in 2021. Only a measly kind of 2.6 in 2022. So, I mean, what's not to like here? Defensive stats going up and also offensive stats going up. I mean, defensive stats going down if you want to say it in terms of the numbers are getting lower. The numbers that you want to go lower are lower. But the one I find interesting is just like when you watch Ireland play at the moment, they just see, and I always use this word, just relentless. The quick recycle ball, the speed they're able to get, just seems incredible. And I love it when you see the stat that kind of matches what your eyes have seen, right? Because it validates what your brain is trying to tell you. 174 passes a game in 2021, up to 210 passes a game. I haven't got the other team's numbers in front of me, but trust me, 210 passes a game is a lot more than the other teams. I would imagine that would be like 150, just off the top of my head. But yeah, 210 passes a game means that ball is moving. I mean, even the offloads are up 7.8 from 3.6 the year before. And interestingly, you might think maybe Ireland had more possession, which means more passes. No, the amount of possession they had is about the same as last year. So despite the fact they've had about the same amount of ball, I mean, I don't have numbers on what the ball and play time was like, but just as a general kind of sweeping statement, similar amount of ball, like within 1% in terms of possession stats, and you've gone up from 174 to 210. That's kind of bonkers, crazy numbers. Interestingly, they've also kicked a wee bit less. Kicks from hand is down from 30 to 25. So high intensity passing, slightly less reliance on the boot. Speaking of the boot, that's the only real stat that I looked at and was like, that's genuinely dipped from the previous year, and that's goal kicking, down from 92 to 76. Now, goal kicking stats on their own, I don't really like them because goal kicking, I mean, all stats, you can use them to be skewed, but goal kicking especially, because you could get a season where you get every kick literally right in front. You could get perfect conditions, and in other seasons you could be on the sideline, and you could have horrible wind conditions. I seem to remember, was it the first game of the Six Nations where we played Wales, gave them a hiding? It was really bad weather. I can't quite recall. But, yeah, I mean, the amount of tries the wingers were scoring and whatnot just means there's going to be tougher kicks. So, I mean, the stat itself is down. Would I read too much into that? Probably not, but obviously the goal kickers want to get their numbers as high as they can go. Other stats, the ruck percentage is pretty much the same as it was the year before. The penalties conceded is pretty similar. The line-out percentage has gone up a few percent. It was in the high 80s, now it's in the low 90s, so that's pleasing. They're mauling it a wee bit more. The tackling percentage is higher than it was last year, so I don't mean to just kind of wax lyrical about everything positive that Ireland's doing, but I'm a stats guy, and there's a lot of positive stats coming out from Ireland this year. I will say it's giving me slightly, I don't know if I'm reading too much into it, but it's giving me kind of slight reminders about the 2018 season that Ireland had under Joe Schmidt. Remember when, I know Ireland didn't win the Six Nations this year like they did in 2018, but yeah, seemingly kind of very dominant and very hard to play against. But yeah, they're giving teams a wee while to look at them, so it'll be interesting to see how teams compare or compete with Ireland in the upcoming games, because Ireland have been doing this for not just this year, but they finished off the end of last year with that kind of wicked intensity as well. So I will be keen to see what other teams can do about this. And interestingly, if you're looking at the numbers when Ireland played France, it is the one game where Ireland got their least clean breaks, their least defenders beaten, their least meters per carry. Like, France were really able to kind of shut them down. So will teams be looking to see what France was doing? I mean, whether you can emulate that or not is easier said than done, because the French side is also pretty stacked. It's also pretty large in terms of some of the bodies they've got in that lineup. And interestingly, they forced Ireland to kick a bit more in that game. Like most games in the Six Nations, Ireland averaged between kind of 5 and 7% of their ball was kicked away, whereas against France it was up to 10. It's the one game that was kind of, several percentage points ahead of all the others. So yeah, it's certainly going to be a tough one to break down. You better believe opposition coaches are looking at what Ireland is doing and seeing if there's ways to break that down. That's one thing I love about rugby, is there's always kind of a tactic that gets countered by another tactic, and it's just coaches trying to line each other up and to see what they can do about it. Like the All Blacks 2018 got beaten by the Irish and then seemed to work it out in time for the World Cup, right? So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. As an All Blacks fan, I'm kind of curious to see how we go against these boys in a couple of months. But anyway, verdict-wise, would you say Ireland didn't meet their expectations, met their expectations, or exceeded? I mean, honestly, ideally you get the Six Nations, but I still think they exceeded expectations. You don't double your amount of tries. You don't get a score or a points on the log margin that would normally be good enough to win the title, and don't say these guys were pretty good, right? So, yeah, albeit they did it in a year when there was a French team that finally met its potential, I think Ireland have certainly exceeded where we may have... but they finished last year pretty well, so I still think they did pretty well. I'm going to say exceeds expectations. Maybe that bird thinks meets expectations. Either way, I think they did pretty well. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. You guys let me know what you reckon about Ireland. If you want British and Irish Lions gear, that stuff's still being flogged off. They're trying to get rid of it, folks. Discounted gear. It's all what I'm about. You know me and my rugby gear. But otherwise, you guys let me know your thoughts on Ireland's campaign, especially the verdict. And I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.